The wind howling off the plains of West Texas carries a biting chill, a cold that seeps through the weather-stripped doors of Abilene and settles deep into the bones of its residents. It is the dead of winter, 2026. For 72 agonizing hours, the power has been out. Families huddle under layers of stiff blankets in sub-freezing living rooms, their breath pluming in the dark, watching the frost creep across the inside of their window panes. Pipes burst, emergency services are paralyzed, the elderly wrap themselves in whatever they can find, praying for the dawn, praying for the hum of the furnace to return. But just miles down the road, piercing the blacked-out horizon, sits a fortress of steel, concrete, and blinding artificial lights. It is a monument to modern greed, humming with the terrifying, infinite power of a small city. This is an artificial intelligence data center, and inside its heavily guarded walls, millions of processors are quietly digesting the world's data at a comfortable, climate-controlled 70 degrees. The servers do not freeze. The servers do not lose power. The servers are immortal. What happened in Abilene was not a natural disaster. It was a financial transaction. The electricity did not just vanish into the winter storm. It was bought. It was routed away from the freezing citizens of Texas and fed directly into the insatiable maw of big tech. Welcome to the great American resource heist of the 21st century. Welcome to the Texas grid crisis of 2026. To understand the sheer magnitude of what is happening to the Texas grid, you have to look past the political theater and look at the raw, unadulterated numbers. We are not talking about a few warehouses with some computers. We are talking about energy parasites of an unprecedented scale. Across West Texas, massive artificial intelligence expansions are tearing through the desert. Campuses requiring 600 megawatts, up to 1.2 gigawatts of constant, uninterrupted power are being rubber-stamped by the state. Let us put that into perspective. A single standard artificial intelligence server rack packed with the latest graphics processing units necessary to train the next generation of large language models can consume up to 100 kilowatts of power. That's just one rack, standing about 6 feet tall. A normal single-family home in Texas might use 3 to 5 kilowatts during peak demand. This means that a single metal cabinet sitting in a sterile hallway of a data center consumes more electricity than an entire suburban neighborhood. And these data centers do not house one rack. They house tens of thousands of them, stacked row after row in buildings the size of multiple football fields. Wall Street's obsession with artificial intelligence triggered an arms race. Microsoft, Meta, Google, and Oracle found themselves in a desperate sprint for compute power. They needed land, they needed lax regulations, and above all, they needed electricity. Texas, with its deregulated, wildly profitable, and historically fragile energy market, offered itself up on a silver platter. The state government rolled out the red carpet, viewing the influx of big tech as a massive economic victory. But they failed to calculate, or perhaps chose to ignore, the parasitic nature of the artificial intelligence industry. These facilities do not produce power. They do not feed energy back into the system. They are black holes, drawing in massive quantities of the state's most vital resource and converting it into digital profits for shareholders sitting in Silicon Valley and on Wall Street. By the time the winter storm hit in 2026, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, known as ERCOT, was already drowning in large load interconnection requests. Over 230 gigawatts of new power requests were filed by the end of 2025 alone. That is nearly 3 times the entire peak capacity of the Texas grid. And yet, ERCOT and state regulators allowed these tech behemoths to plug directly into an already strained and crumbling infrastructure,
without mandating that they build their own dedicated power plants. They attached a leech the size of a blue whale to a patient already on life support. The grid operators knew the margins were razor thin. They knew that adding gigawatts of relentless 24-hour demand to a grid famous for its catastrophic failures was a recipe for disaster. But the billions of dollars flowing into the state blinded the regulatory agencies to the inevitable collapse. But the complicity goes much deeper, and the financial mechanics of this arrangement border on the absurd. Through a controversial mechanism known as demand response, these mega facilities are actually heavily incentivized to hold the grid hostage. The program was originally designed to reward factories for powering down during grid emergencies, but in the era of crypto mining and artificial intelligence, it has been weaponized by billionaires. When the grid approaches total collapse and electricity prices spike to thousands of dollars per megawatt hour, these data centers agree to turn off their massive servers. But they do not do it out of a sense of civic duty. They do it because ERCOT pays them millions upon millions of Texas taxpayer dollars to stop using the electricity they were monopolizing in the first place. In 2025 and 2026, tech giants essentially operated as legally sanctioned extortionists, raking in staggering profits simply by flipping an off switch, while the average Texan sat in the dark, footing the bill for the ransom. It is a wealth transfer scheme completely disguised as a grid management policy.
The financial bleeding does not stop at demand response payouts. It is showing up in the mailboxes of every resident in the state. If you are wondering why your utility bills have skyrocketed to unimaginable heights this year, you only need to look at the staggering infrastructure costs required to support the artificial intelligence boom. Upgrading transmission lines, building new substations, and desperately attempting to add capacity to the grid cost billions upon billions of dollars. And in a deregulated market, those costs are fully socialized. They are passed down to the ratepayer. The single mother in Dallas, the retired veteran in Houston, the school teacher in Austin. You are the ones subsidizing the grid upgrades required for tech monopolies to train their algorithms. You are paying for the privilege of losing your own power. You are funding the destruction of your own infrastructure so that a chatbot can generate a human-like response in a fraction of a second, or so an automated trading bot can shave a microsecond off a stock transaction. Your financial suffering is the bedrock of their technological revolution. Yet electricity is only half of this apocalyptic equation. The true horror of the data center lies in a resource even more precious and even more scarce in the state of Texas: water. The processors that run these massive models run incredibly hot. Traditional air cooling is no longer sufficient to keep the silicon from melting down. These modern facilities require advanced liquid cooling systems, and those systems require water, millions upon millions of gallons of it every single day. A mid-sized data center can easily consume 300,000 gallons of municipal water daily. The mega campuses sprawling across the West Texas landscape, like the massive projects bordering Abilene, can draw up to 5 million gallons a day. That is the equivalent water usage of a city of 50,000 people poured directly into the cooling towers of a single tech facility. Between the direct water used for cooling and the indirect water required to generate the massive amounts of electricity these centers consume, it is estimated that data centers in Texas will drain nearly 50 billion gallons of water by the end of this year alone. And they are doing this in a state that is chronically, persistently dying of thirst. Texas is currently locked in a brutal, unforgiving drought. Aquifers that took millennia to fill are rapidly shrinking. Reservoirs look like cracked mudflats. Farmers are watching their generational crops turn to dust, forced into bankruptcy because there is not enough water left in the ground to irrigate their fields.
Entire rural communities are being told to take shorter showers, to stop watering their lawns, to conserve every precious drop, to avoid catastrophic shortages. But the corporate data centers face no such municipal restrictions. Through sheer financial leverage, they are granted unfettered access to local water supplies, drinking entire basins dry to keep their servers functioning. Texas is literally bleeding its most vital natural resource into the desert air, exchanging the lifeblood of its agricultural heartland for the chilled hum of corporate server racks. Big tech is literally drinking rural Texas dry. As we look past the devastation of winter 2026, a terrifying reality begins to take shape on the horizon. If the Texas grid collapsed under the weight of artificial intelligence during the winter, when energy demand is typically lower, what is going to happen when the brutal, unforgiving Texas summer arrives? Forecasters are already predicting catastrophic heat waves, with temperatures expected to soar well past 110 degrees for weeks on end. Air conditioners across the state will be pushed to their absolute limits. The grid will be operating at maximum critical capacity just to keep citizens alive in the sweltering heat. But the data centers will still be there. They will not take a summer vacation. They will still be drawing their gigawatts of power. They will still be drinking their millions of gallons of water. And when the grid inevitably buckles under the crushing strain of a relentless heat wave, who will be the first to lose power? We already know the answer, because we've already seen it. It will not be the trillion-dollar technology providers. They have secured their energy contracts. They have leveraged their immense political influence. Their facilities will continue to operate, cool and efficient, running at a perfectly balanced 70 degrees, while the neighborhoods just beyond their fences go dark in the deadly, suffocating summer heat. We are witnessing the dawn of a terrifying new era, an era where basic human necessities, warmth in the freezing winter, cooling in the blistering summer, and clean water to drink, are being aggressively commodified and sold to the highest bidder. The 2026 Texas grid crisis is not a random anomaly. It is a preview. It is a stark, unforgiving warning of a future where electricity is no longer a public utility designed for the common good, but a premium luxury reserved for the machines. Big tech has bought the power. They have brought the water. They have captured the regulatory agencies designed to protect the public. And unless something drastically changes in the halls of power, they have bought the future of Texas. The servers will hum, the corporate profits will soar, and the citizens will be left exactly where they are now, freezing, sweltering, and completely in the dark.